Hi everyone. Today I'm with leading customer experience expert and thought leader Shaun Smith. Now Shaun's first book, Managing the Customer Experience, is regarded by many as the how-to textbook of customer experience practice. His subsequent books focus on those brands that turn this theory into action to achieve real differentiation and customer advocacy. His book, Bold, How to Be Brave in Business and Win, tells the story of 14 brands that actually transformed their markets through customer experience. Now he's launching his latest book, On Purpose, a practical guide to executing business purpose successfully by delivering a branded customer experience people love. Now, Shaun, before we get into understanding more about your book, I'd just like to ask you a few questions about customer experience. Now, Smith & Co, I believe, started back in 2002, so it'd be really interesting for people to hear, where do you see the customer experience market today and going forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. As you say, customer experience has really gone out into sort of the widespread business world now. It's become a very common term. A lot of people are talking about customer experience, but I think there are a couple of challenges with it. And I think the first challenge is one of being able to intentionally and consistently deliver the experience across different channels, across multiple channels. Obviously now consumers can buy pretty much whatever they want, wherever they want, across any of these channels. And so I think the challenge is to deliver an experience which becomes distinctive for your brand across those different channels. And I think the challenge is not one of technology, as so many people are talking about, omni-channel technology, or etc. And I actually think that, yes, the technology is important, but it's enabling. That's not the issue. The issue is being able to be intentional and consistent and very clear about what the brand stands for, the nature of the experience you want to be able to provide your customers, and then to be able to dramatize that or demonstrate it across those different channels. So I think that's one of the key challenges.
That's great, because of course so many companies get maybe a little bit confused between UX and CX. Make it easy, customer effort score, and that's job done with customer experience. But you mean something a little bit more than that, connecting it with the brand.
So a number of authors, of writers have spoken about customer effort, Dixon and others. And, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, it's certainly true that one of the great distinctive advantages of Amazon, for example, is their ability to be able to sell a huge range of product and get it to you in a way which is incredibly streamlined and efficient. So that is an important, I think, differentiator for Amazon and for other organizations. But it isn't just about effort. To give you an example of what I mean by that, if we take a brand like giffgaff, which is the telecommunications company, or Lego, for example. In the case of giffgaff, their customers, it's called the People-Powered Network, and their customers willingly give up their time to answer technical support questions, FAQs, to man chat forums to help each other, to even make advertisements for the brand. So they are willingly investing effort because of the way they feel about the brand. And in fact, giffgaff's NPS score is 80% plus in a market which I think is more like a few percentage points plus. If we look at Lego, there are Lego advocates who willingly give up their time to go on workshops to design and invent new Lego products and to be part of that community. So the point I'm making here is yes, efficiency and effort is important, but I think what's more important is people feeling engaged with your brand, understanding what your brand purpose is all about, and being willing to be part of it.
What's the, if you're an executive going to the board to say this is a great idea, we should do this, there's always that ROI question. I mean, where is the return from going beyond make it easy, if you like? Are you talking about net promoter and loyalty, or are you talking about something else that demonstrate the board why they should invest in connecting the brand to their experience?
When we work with organizations, we typically use one of three strategies, three arguments, if you will, for discussing these things with the board. And it really does depend on the culture, the nature of the organization. So the first, and by means the most powerful, of the arguments for investing in customer experience is because it's the right thing. And that's why this new book on purposes has been written, because if you look at the great brands, they have a strong sense of purpose beyond profit. They want to do the right thing for their customers. They want to create a difference for their customers. And when they do that really well, then guess what? Profits will flow. And you only need to think of organizations like Zappos or John Lewis, a number of others, Southwest Airlines, to know that, yes, they are very commercial, they are very profitable, but that's not what drives them. What drives them is making that difference for their customers. And so when you have an organization that has that belief, it's relatively easy. So we've been working with Premier Inn, for example, for the last 2 or 3 years. And Premier Inn's purpose is making guests feel brilliant through a great night's sleep, and that's really what drives the organization. And so it's relatively easy when you're talking with the executive board to be able to say, well, the reason we should do this is because it's actually going to improve the sleep experience for the consumers, and of course, if we get that right, then everything else flows. The second argument is what we call the power of one, and it's disarmingly simple, but it's very powerful. So the power of one says if we can identify a key sensitivity, and if we were to dial that up by 1, let's say, or 1% or 10%, it varies, what would that do? So we were working with one very large fashion retailer, and we identified that if each of the sales associates sold one more product a week, then that would add 25 million to the bottom line. Well, you don't have to do sophisticated ROI calculations in order for that to be a no-brainer. When we said to the board, if each of your people did this, just sold one more product, that's what it would do. What's the probability of being able to get them to do that? It just becomes a no-brainer. And in fact, in the case of that particular retailer, they saw revenues increase by 40% in the year following the initiative. The third is indeed the ROI case, and in fact we have a product called the CEM calculator where we plug in the actual data from a customer, a client, that's the customer base, the average frequency of purchase, the average amount of purchase, their NPS if they know it, if not their customer satisfaction data, and on the basis of a lot of the empirical research that's out there as well as our own, we're able to calculate what the likely return would be of investing in a customer experience initiative. Is it 100% accurate? No, but it's probably in the 80-90% level, and it's certainly probably one of the more powerful ways of calculating the potential ROI of customer experience. And so if you've got a CFO or a CEO that is particularly numerate and needing to show me the money before we do anything, that's the approach we would take. But our favorite approach is always to start with what's the higher purpose? Why should this matter?
Very good. And that brings us on to the book On Purpose, which is coming out, I believe, this October. It's your new book. You've given a little bit of detail about it. Perhaps you might want to say a little bit more about On Purpose. What's the purpose of On Purpose?
Well, we wrote a book in 2012 called Bold, How to Be Brave in Business and Win. And as you said in your introduction, it talked about 14 brands that were transforming their markets. And when we did the research for that, one of the dimensions that came out quite strongly was having a sense of purpose beyond profit. So yes, being commercially successful, yes, being very intentional about making money, but at the same time, what was really most important was why do we exist? So, and the Zapposes and the Apples and the Virgins share a very strong belief in what they do and why they do it. And so that kind of got us thinking about this notion of purpose. The second thing that has happened, of course, over the last few years is we've seen the financial services crisis. And there's huge consumer cynicism about banks in particular, bonuses, bankers. We don't trust them. We don't believe that they have their interest at heart. We think it's a lot more about them making money, obscene levels of profit for themselves, and bonuses rather than actually creating value for their customers. And we've seen the backlash in the market against that high level of commercialization, which is not perhaps in the consumer's interest. And what we're seeing also, I think, is growing consumer cynicism and sort of a bit of a backlash against the big corporates. And so that customers now seem to be favoring those organizations that are perhaps smaller, that are more likely to resonate with the customer. And in fact, there are a couple of pieces of research. So the Havas Media do an annual survey called Meaningful Brands. They've just published it in 2015. Edelman also have a purpose study where they also look at organizations. And what both have concluded is that increasingly, year on year, consumers are more likely to favor organizations with whom they identify at a values level than anything else. In fact, the way we feel about an organization is actually more important than the products they happen to sell. So the products have to be acceptable, but the way we feel about an organization, the way that they treat us, whether we like them, is increasingly important. So that was the sort of the second dimension of it. And the third was really coming back down to customer experience. So many people are jumping on the customer experience bandwagon.
Yes.
And so many people are doing it in a way which is not that intentional. We have a phrase we talk about, which is, you can't force it, fake it, or fudge it. And I think so many organizations are faking it. You've only got to look at some of the organizations that have been following brands like Innocent, for example. So Innocent did a fabulous job of launching its smoothies and using a quirky tone of voice that really resonated with customers. And all of a sudden, now what we're seeing is a lot of other products that are also using quirky tones of voice. But it's packaging. That's as far as it goes. If we look at fudging it, you've only got to look at a brand like BP that set itself out as being the environmentally friendly brand beyond petroleum, and when push came to shove in the Gulf of Mexico, didn't invest in the appropriate equipment that could have prevented the oil spill, and the rest is history. And in fact, in the States, they say that BP stands for British pollution. So that's an example of fudging it, if you will, when it comes to shove, push comes to shove. So I think purposeful brands are those that are clear about what they stand for and then deliver it. In fact, in the book, we talk about these brands do three big things. There are many things they do. We've done fairly extensive research, which we talk about, but there are three big things they do. They stand up. So you're clear about what they stand for. You're absolutely clear about what this brand's all about. Secondly, they stand out. They are different from their competitors in a way which is meaningful for customers. And thirdly, they stand firm. They create cultures that sustain them. And the standing out part is about standing out in the areas that matter to your customers. We often liken it, we often talk about an ECG, we know that's sort of a heart line. So if you think of a heart line, what you want to see there is a nice wave. Flat line is bad, means you're dead. And that's the same with customer experience, because if you're flat at the bottom of the customer satisfaction rating, if you will, the scale, then clearly you are performing poorly and you're not going to be around very long. If you're flat in the center, so if you're meeting expectation pretty much in all areas, well, that's great, but you're not differentiated. If you're flat at the top, if you're 5 out of 5 on every single touch point, well, that's economically unrealistic. Nobody can afford to do that. Or if you could, you'd be having to charge so much for your product or your service that you would price yourself out of the market. So inevitably, you have to make some choices about where to invest, which touch points, which elements of the customer experience to over-index in order to differentiate your brand. And one of the things that we found in the work we do is that's a crucial decision. We do a workshop and generally we identify through research what those crucial touch points are, what the key value drivers are, and from that we design the new experience. And what you're looking for is no more than 2 or 3 areas where you really differentiate and over-index. In the case of Premier Inn, for example, it's all about the room and the bed. And that will be different from other competitors. So they don't invest in 24-hour business centers. They don't invest in health clubs because that's not what they're about. So many organizations, however, are in getting into customer experience, believe it's all about delighting the customer, exceeding expectations, and trying to do that at every single touch point. And that's just not sustainable. And also, by the way, even if they could sustain it, the chances are it's probably not memorable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really finding your purpose and delivering your purpose at the overweighted moments where it's important and resonates with the customer. And on purpose, is that, you say delivering a branded customer experience people love. In buying this book, do you give frameworks or do you give best practice examples?
Yeah. So, so whereas Bold was, what is it about these brands and what do they do? This is really a lot more about the how-to. So how do they do it? What processes do they go through? What steps did they take? What challenges did they overcome? What issues did they have to resolve? And we walk through a number of case studies. So we've got some fabulous case studies in the book from startup organizations like Citizen M, which is really transforming the hotel market, to Metro Bank, which of course we talked about financial services earlier, but Metro Bank is one of those brands that people truly do love. The NPS is the highest in the market. Through retailers like Lush, through airlines like Southwest. So we look at a number of organizations and identify what are those characteristics, what is their purpose, and how do they differentiate themselves and drive that through. What are their cultures like? So we look at Zappos and how it creates a very distinctive culture. And then we have a toolkit, both in the book and online, which is a pretty extensive toolkit, which now enables the reader to apply the principles to their own organization. And one of the things we deliberately chose to do, it's our own point of differentiation, if you will, is that a lot of our clients, a lot of our customers have told us that they really value the Smith Co website, that we put a lot of stuff up there. It's very content rich, and we give a lot of things away. And they've told us that they really appreciate that. So we've decided to do even more of that. So the book has a complete toolkit at the back. There's also an online version of it that people can use, and it's available to anybody. So that's just, as I say, a point of differentiation. So what we're hoping is, our purpose is to inspire, educate, and advise organizations wishing to differentiate themselves on the customer experience. And the inspiring part is that I speak all over the world and give a lot of keynotes and so on. So that's the inspiring part, as well as the writing, hopefully. The educating part is we do a lot of workshops, and the advising part is obviously we have a consultancy where we work with clients to help them and advise them to implement their own customer experience. So because of that purpose, we feel that by adding a lot of content and making it easy for people to apply the principles is an important part of what we do.
Absolutely. And could you just let the listeners know where they can get in contact with you if they want to follow up on this?
Yeah, so it's smithcoconsultancy.com, or they can just Google Smith & Co. The book is available for pre-order on Amazon.com and Amazon.co.uk. It's actually published on October the 3rd, but it's already up there. And in fact, we had some good news last week. It's been voted or selected as tagged as the #1 new marketing release for the forthcoming period. So that's good.
Very good. One final question from me. Speaking to Joe Pine, talks about distinctive experiences, distinctive from goods and services. Are you meaning the same sort of thing when you talk about, for instance, I think you gave that hotel example, they had a good night's sleep. Are you making it an experience that distinctive way? Or are you making it more just doing it excellent what you do already when you talk about on-premise?
No, I think it's about distinctive. We have a couple of terms. So one is we call brilliant basics. So brilliant basics are those things which you just have to get right. You have to be great at them. They don't differentiate you, but they do irritate. They do drive customers away if you get them wrong. Yes. So an obvious example in the telecoms market would be, you have to get your infrastructure, your network right, your signal quality right, because nobody's going to thank you for giving them a signal, but they'll soon criticize you if you don't. Absolutely. So that's a brilliant basic. Magic moments are the other things we think about, and the magic moments are where you truly do make it distinctive and where you differentiate. So a magic moment is when people say, well, that's the only organization that quite does it in that way. That's really memorable. If we look at retailers, a magic moment, one of our clients was Burberry. If you go into the Burberry store in Regent Street, the flagship store in London, one of the things you notice is that there are no counters, there are no tills. You've just got a lot of very knowledgeable sales associates wandering around with iPads who are able to give you fantastic information about the products and make the make the sale wherever you happen to be in the store. So that's kind of a magic moment. It's something which is very rare. Not many other people are doing it, and that's a magic moment. If you look at Lush, another retailer, but a very different magic moment, it's as you walk past the store and you get those incredible smells from their what they call their naked products, because they're not wrapped, because they're made from organic products. They're delicious smells, if you will. And that's the first thing you notice about a Lush store is the smell, and the second is the color. So that's very distinctive to Lush. And so it's really about the magic moments of those things, those one or two things, and you can't have too many of them, but there's one or two things that really truly make you distinctive from any other brand.
I'm also picking up this notion of fakery. I think you gave the example of Innocent, where they came out with some magic moments, if you like, in the language they use, but eminently copyable. So I'm also dragging it into, well, you have to be authentic in delivering those magic moments. So does it all come back to the culture, ultimately, and the authentic nature of the culture?
Yes, I think it does. It's Joe Pine wrote a book called Authenticity, in fact, which is really making that point, that it has to be authentic. And the way it's authentic is when the brand and the customer experience is owned by the whole organization. It's holistic. The trouble is, in many organizations, is marketing own the experience or the brand, and so what they do is to say, oh, well, that's great, let's come up with some quirky packaging and some great tone of voice, and we'll tell a story about our product, and then we'll put it out there on the web, but nobody else in the organization understands it or maybe cares about it. Yes. And it's certainly not dramatized through the experience itself, and so it's just a marketing campaign. It is not owned by the rest of the organization. In fact, one of the terms we use is called triad power. And triad power is not, the traditional view of triad powers. You had to have operations in Europe, Asia, and the States. What we mean by triad power is when marketing and HR and operations operate as one around a common agenda. Yes. And it's about working collaboratively and using budgets, using initiatives to reinforce what it is that you're trying to do with your customers in terms of the customer experience. So marketing's role is about communicating it in an effective way. HR's role is about finding people who can deliver it consistently and rewarding them for doing so. An operations role is obviously managing and leading people and putting in place the processes to enable that to be delivered every day consistently to the customers. And it's only when you get those three functions that work around that common agenda that you get authenticity, that you truly do get the experience that you really want to provide the customers. And faking it, forcing it, or fudging it is usually when one of those three functions goes down that particular path, whether it's marketing it or trying to provide it without the others being on board.
Okay, so On Purpose, coming out in October. Please go to Amazon and get this book, and feel free to connect with Shaun Smith. If you just want to give your contact details one more time, Shaun.
Yeah, sure. So the best thing to do is to email me at ss@smithcoconsultancy.com, or if you just Google for Smith & Co. Customer Experience, then you'll come up with our webpage, hopefully.
Shaun, thank you very much for your time.